Hello there. Welcome to Conversations from the Recipe Book of Life. I'm Bill Gisclair Sullivan, and thank you for pulling up a chair today. I don't know where you're listening from. Maybe you're taking a walk, maybe you're driving somewhere, maybe you're making dinner, maybe you're just waking up, or maybe life has felt a little heavy lately, and you just need a quiet voice to spend a little time with. However you found your way here, I'm really glad that you did. I'm the founder and senior director at Meditate School of Mindfulness and Sound, creator of the SVMT method and author of the Recipe Book of Life. But for the next little while, none of that really matters. Today, we're just a couple people having a conversation. Before we begin though, let's take a nice deep breath together. Nothing complicated, no special posture, no pressure to do it right. Just take a slow breath in and then just let it go. Then notice the chair beneath you. Notice the ground beneath you. Notice your shoulders. Your shoulders. Mine always seem to think they're auditioning to become earrings. Maybe yours do too. Let them come down just a little bit. Take another breath and quietly remind yourself, I'm here. I'm here now. Not perfectly here. Not peaceful every second. Not with everything figured out. Just here now. And for now, that's enough. You know, I've been thinking about recipes this week. I do that a lot. Not because I've suddenly become this great gourmet chef. I love to cook, but gourmet? I don't know. That might be a slight exaggeration. I've always loved recipes, especially old ones, especially those that have been passed down, the ones that have been folded and unfolded for years. The recipe cards that have flour still stuck to the corner, coffee stains that somehow became part of the instructions, little notes scribbled in the margins. Use a little less salt next time. Or, Grandma used to double this. Or, don't forget the vanilla. Those little cards, they tell stories. Actually, they tell family stories. They tell stories of love. Sometimes I think the recipe itself isn't the treasure, it's the notes, it's the handwriting. Because every stain reminds us someone we loved stood here once. Someone created this dish. They stirred this bowl. Perhaps they laughed in the kitchen. They fed people from these instructions, and I love that. But there's one thing about recipes that's always amused me a little bit. They're incredibly optimistic. They always assume that we have every ingredient already. Add 2 eggs. Well, what if I don't have 2 eggs? Nobody asked. The recipe just keeps moving. Add 2 eggs and then keep going. And then there's those directions that say add a pinch. A pinch? Whose pinch? My grandmother's pinch? My pinch? Because I'm pretty sure those are 2 different measurements. And then my favorite, my all-time favorite, bake until it feels right. You'll know. Really? Because I remember in my 20s, when I first started really cooking on my own, I don't know if the chicken's done. And I'm pretty sure I don't know what I'm doing with my life either. So maybe recipes are more spiritual than we realize. They assume we'll learn by paying attention. Not by perfection, just by paying attention. Life feels a little like that, doesn't it? We spend so much of our lives planning and making lists and setting goals, imagining how everything's going to unfold. We gather the ingredients we think we need: education, relationships, dreams, retirement plans, vacation ideas, money, maybe a little emergency chocolate hidden somewhere no one else knows about. Then, life quietly changes the recipe. Not dramatically, most of the time. Usually. Sometimes. It's one phone call, one conversation, one unexpected goodbye, one diagnosis, one unexpected ending. One dream that doesn't unfold the way we imagined, and suddenly we're standing in a kitchen we don't recognize, holding ingredients we would never have chosen. If someone had asked me years ago, Bill, would you like to become wiser through loss? I probably would have answered, no thank you, do have another option. I think most of us would. We love the idea of wisdom. We're just not nearly as excited about the way wisdom usually arrives. For years, I thought peace would arrive when life finally started cooperating with my plans. I never actually said that out loud. It actually sounds a little ridiculous when I say it now, but somewhere underneath I believed it. If people would just behave the way I expected, if relationships stayed the same, if nobody got sick, if everyone I loved stayed exactly where I wanted them to stay, if life would just simply follow my outline, then I could finally relax. Then I'd finally feel peaceful. Have you ever noticed how often we negotiate with reality? This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. I can't believe this is happening again. This isn't how I thought my life was going to go. It's almost as though we think reality is going to stop and listen, look slightly embarrassed and say, "Oh, you know what, Bill? You're absolutely right. Let's go back and rewrite last Tuesday." But that never happens. Reality has an undefeated record. One of my favorite Byron Katie quotes says, "When you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time." The first time I heard that, I laughed. And then I just got a little irritated because I realized how much of my life I spent arguing with things that had already happened. Not healing them, not learning from them, arguing with them. Can I tell you about someone? Someone special. His name was Marc. Many years ago, in the middle of my life, he was my partner. And when he died, something happened inside of me that I didn't understand for a very long time. I thought I was grieving, and I was. But I was also doing something else. I was arguing with reality. I didn't know that's what I was doing. I just kept thinking, this wasn't supposed to happen. Maybe you said those words too. Not only when somebody dies, maybe after a divorce, after losing a job, after receiving a diagnosis, after somebody walks away from you, after watching a friendship quietly disappear. This wasn't supposed to happen. I know that sentence. We all know that sentence. I lived inside of that sentence for months, for years. I found myself living in two worlds. There was the world that actually existed, and then there was the world my heart kept trying to recreate. I'd still start to drive home at the end of a workday. I'd hear something funny and think, I can't wait to tell Marc. I'd hear a song that we danced to. I'd walk into a restaurant that smelled familiar. I'd remember a sound. And for the briefest moment, everything felt exactly as it used to. But then reality would quietly tap me on the shoulder and said, he's not coming home. And if I'm honest, I wasn't fighting grief, I was fighting reality. And those are two very different things. The day things began to soften wasn't the day I stopped missing him. I still miss him every day. I probably always will. The day things softened was the day I stopped asking life to give him back. Acceptance didn't ask me to stop loving him. It didn't ask me to stop remembering him. It didn't even ask me to stop grieving. It simply asked me to stop spending today's energy arguing with yesterday. And when I finally stopped fighting reality, something beautiful happened. The energy I'd been using trying to change the past became available to love what remained. Think about that. The energy that I used trying to change the past suddenly became available to love what remained in my heart. That's acceptance. In all the years I've been teaching it, I can tell you, acceptance is one of the most misunderstood words I know. It doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean pretending something didn't hurt or doesn't still hurt. Acceptance simply says, this is what is true now. This is what is here now. And only from there can we begin asking, what do I do next? You know, I've wondered something ever since then. Why was I so exhausted? It wasn't only grief. Grief is heavy enough. But there was something else I was carrying. It was almost as though I had one foot standing in the life that was actually happening, and the other foot planted firmly in the life I wished had happened. So no wonder I was tired. I was trying to live two realities at the same time, and maybe you've done that too. Maybe not because someone died. Maybe because a relationship ended, or a business changed, or your children grew up, or retirement looks different than you imagined, or your body began telling a story different than it told you 20 years ago. Life has this confoundingly remarkable habit of changing without asking our permission first. I'm sure you've noticed that life isn't terribly interested in our approval. It just keeps unfolding. And somewhere along the way, I realized something that changed me. Acceptance isn't something we do once. It's something we have to practice, almost daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes every 5 minutes, especially if you've ever sat in traffic. Because acceptance isn't reserved for life's biggest moments. It's also the grocery line that is moving painfully slow. The flight that you ran to catch that suddenly gets delayed. The person who still hasn't answered your text. The meeting that should have ended 20 minutes ago. The body that doesn't quite move the way it used to. The class that the teacher keeps saying the same thing over and over and over again. The body that doesn't quite move the way it used to. The weather on the day you planned a picnic. Life is constantly inviting us to loosen our grip on how we thought today was supposed to go. I've been teaching mindfulness for a long time now, and people often ask me, Bill, what's the hardest part? They usually expect me to talk about meditation, about quieting the mind, about concentration. Honestly, I don't think those are the hardest parts. I think the hardest part is letting today be today. Letting this moment be this moment, without insisting it become something else. Without insisting that today become yesterday or tomorrow. That's presence. That's the sacred pause. That's where equanimity quietly walks into the room, not erasing our feelings, not telling us everything happens for a reason. I have to tell you, that phrase has never brought me much comfort. Everything happens for a reason? Come on. When someone's hurting, they usually don't need a reason. They need a hand. They need a heart. They need someone to listen, not to tell you. Learn from this, right? They need someone willing to sit beside them without trying to fix them. They need someone willing to say, I'm here. And maybe that's what acceptance really is. Not explaining away the pain, but willing to stay with ourselves inside the pain. You know, one of the most beautiful things I've learned through teaching the SVMT method is that the body is remarkably honest, much more honest than the mind. The mind can tell wonderful stories. It will convince us to say we're fine when we don't. It can convince us that everyone else is wrong. Well, yeah, anyway. It can convince us that if we think about something long enough, we'll somehow solve yesterday. But the body, not so much. The body simply whispers, I'm tired today. I'm holding my breath now. My shoulders hurt. My stomach is twisting. My heart is aching. Now, the body's not trying to be dramatic. It's simply telling the truth, and it wants to be heard. And I think that's one of the reasons I love somatic work so much. The body keeps inviting us back to reality, back to this breath in this moment, to this chair that we're sitting in, to this heart that's beating, to this breath that's flowing, this moment. Not because this moment is always easy, and not because this moment is always spectacular, but because it's the one place that we actually live in now. So a few years ago, I began asking myself a different question. Instead of, why is this happening to me? I'd stop, I'd breathe, and I'd ask, what is this asking of me? Notice how different those questions feel. One keeps me looking backward. The other quietly turns me towards tomorrow. What is this asking of me? Is it asking me to be more patient, to set a boundary, to forgive, to let go of that emotion I've been holding inside for so long? To ask someone to sit beside me for a moment, to rest, to let go, to become softer or stronger? Sometimes the answer surprises me. Sometimes the answer is so simple. Bill, this moment is asking you to stop fighting reality. Not forever, just for this breath. I wonder if that's one of the great invitations of being human. Not to control every ingredient, but to learn how to love the life that's actually sitting in front of us now, in all of its different ways. Because here's the beautiful irony. The moment I stopped asking life to become different is the moment that life became more beautiful. Not because it became easier, not because there was no stress, no loss, none of that. Not because grief totally disappeared, it didn't. But because I was finally able to notice what was here still. There are still people here that I love. There's still work that I love to do. All of those sunsets that I would have missed if I wasn't paying attention, the friendships that were still growing, the laughter that slowly returns, the quiet moments of joy that had been waiting patiently for me to pay attention to them, for me to stop arguing with yesterday long enough to notice today is a beautiful day. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that acceptance gives us. It gives us back today. And today is where life has always been waiting. So, can I confess something? I still catch myself arguing with reality, not every day, but often enough to keep me humble. It usually isn't over the big things anymore, though. Those have a way of teaching me and reminding me it's the little things now. That airline delay, the technology that decides to update itself 5 minutes before I'm supposed to teach. The algorithm that changed suddenly and all of a sudden everything's different. The grocery store that's out of the one thing I came in for. Or my personal favorite, walking into a room and completely forgetting why I'm there. It happens. Just wait. Now I realize some of that may simply be because I've turned 63 this year. Or maybe it's just that my mind has become very efficient at saying, well, while you're here, let's think about 17 other things. Life has a wonderful sense of humor, and maybe that's part of the lesson too. Maybe the lesson is asking us to be a little kinder to ourselves so that we stop expecting perfection from being human. I've also noticed something else. The older I get, the less interested I am in being right. Now don't misunderstand me, I still love being right, and I'm right most of the time, right? Let's not get carried away. But I no longer need to win every argument, especially the ones I'm having inside of my own head. Because I've realized something. You can win an argument with reality and still lose your peace. Actually, I don't think you ever really win, though. Reality doesn't surrender. It simply waits, patiently, to show us the truth. Like the ocean. You can stand on the shore and yell at the tide all afternoon if you want. But the tide's still coming in. And so is reality. So I wonder if peace isn't found through controlling the waves. Maybe it's found in learning how to float or ride the waves. Now, before anybody corrects me, I'm not talking about floating through life pretending difficult things don't matter. I'm not suggesting we ignore injustice, that we don't stand up for what matters to us, or avoid hard conversations, or smile when our heart is breaking. No. Sometimes love asks us to speak. Sometimes love asks us to walk away. Sometimes love asks us to stand up and speak our mind. Sometimes it asks us to say, this is not okay. Acceptance isn't passivity. Acceptance is clarity. It's the moment we stop confusing what has happened with what we choose to do next. Those are two completely different conversations. And when we stop spending all of our energy trying to rewrite yesterday, again, suddenly, we have enough energy to write tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons I love the image of this recipe. Because every good cook knows something. You can't take the salt back out. Once it's in, it's in. You can't complain about it. You can't stare at the pot and wish it would go away. You can point your finger and say it wasn't my fault, but none of that changes the soup. But you can ask, what does it need now? Maybe if I add a little more broth, maybe another potato, maybe another carrot, maybe some lemon to balance out the flavor. The question changes. It's not, how do I undo what already happened? To, given what's here, what would bring this back into balance? And you know, I think that's one of the kindest questions we can ask ourselves. Not, how do I get my old life back? But how do I lovingly meet the life that's here now? I have a feeling. That's what Marc gave me. Not through dying. I would never say that. I would have chosen more years with him in a heartbeat. But through loving him and through grieving him, he quietly taught me something. Love doesn't end when reality changes. Love changes form. And that's different. Very different. Because love remains. Love is an energy that cannot be diminished. The relationship changes. The conversations become quieter. The memories become warmer. And over time, the ache softens. Not because the love becomes smaller, but because your heart becomes larger. The heart makes room for more. And maybe that's what acceptance really is. Making room. Not making excuses. Not pretending, not forgetting, making room. Not for more blame, room for more gratitude, room for more mystery, room for more laughter, room for another chapter, room for another person, room for another sunrise, room for another recipe. So if you're carrying something today, something you wish had never happened, can I simply sit beside you for a moment? And breathe. Can I sit beside you, not to fix it, not to try to explain it away, just to remind you you're not alone. Maybe that's the most healing thing we can offer each other. Not answers, presence. Not solutions, company. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give another human being is simply refusing to let them carry reality alone. So before we finish today, I'd love to leave you with something we can actually practice. Not tomorrow, but today. The next time you notice yourself saying, "This shouldn't be happening," pause. Take one breath. Not because the breath changes reality, because it changes your relationship with reality. Then ask yourself quietly, what is true right now? And after that, what is this moment asking of me? Not forever. Emphasis on this moment. And sometimes the answer will be a pinch of courage, a cup of rest, a bit of forgiveness, a strong boundary. Sometimes it's asking you to let the tears flow, to pick up the phone. Sometimes it's asking you to make a cup of tea or sit out in the morning light for 5 more minutes. Don't underestimate those 5 minutes. Some of the deepest transformations of my life have begun with a quiet cup of tea and a willingness to sit and breathe. So today's recipe ingredient is one honest breath, a willingness to stop arguing with yesterday, a generous spoonful of compassion, a pinch of curiosity, and enough courage to ask, what is this asking of me? The preparation says, breathe slowly. Notice what you've been resisting. Hold it gently, not tightly. Add kindness before judgment, and repeat daily. The recipe won't make yesterday disappear, but it may help tomorrow taste a little bit different. So, I thank you for spending a little time at the table with me today. If this conversation stirred something in you, I hope you'll continue the journey with the Recipe Book of Life. It's filled with stories and reflections and practices that have grown out of many of the same conversations. And if you're looking for a community to explore these ingredients more deeply, I'd love to welcome you to the Meditate Tribe. Until next time, keep adding beautiful ingredients and know that love is the way and truth is the path, and the recipe is still unfolding. I'm Bill Sullivan, and it's been my honor to sit with you today. Give me a like or share something in the comments and let me know how present you were.